Hello, I hope you had a great Easter, whatever you were doing. I'm sure it was massively different to what you originally had planned, wherever you're watching or listening to this podcast. But hello from me. Hello from Lizzie.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine. Still surviving the lockdown.
Yeah, I've had a bit of office contact. I've been into the studio on Easter weekend, actually. I was working on Easter weekend. So I've sort of been in the office and had that contact. But as you can see, we're still both at home doing this podcast. It's and probably will be for some foreseeable future.
You've had a change of scene this week, though, which is...
Yeah, I thought the study upstairs, which is fine for working in, is a pretty drab place. So I thought I'd slightly relocate today to the downstairs. So it looks I don't know, slightly more interesting, not massively.
We can't see if you've killed off the plastic plant, though.
Killed off the plastic plant, yeah. Actually, there is a plant over here, but in the window. But again, I have no idea whether it's real or not. I should lean over. Shall I lean over and check? Hold on. It is. It's another plastic one. So another one you can't kill. Right. So should we get on to matters in hand? So the lockdowns continued. The Royals are still. I kind of get the impression, don't you, Lizzie, that they're still actually trying to be. I struggle to find the word here, relevant or just engaged, because there was so much they would have been doing had this lockdown not happened, and they're still desperate to do whatever they can in whatever circumstance to connect with people.
Yeah, well, I wrote a list earlier of everything that's been going on over the last week, and actually it is quite busy, and I think busier than either of us expected it to be. I think we always wondered if we could keep this going during the lockdown, but it's proving quite easy to keep
whether we'd be sat here every week saying, "Or nothing to report, goodbye," but there actually is. So what you mentioned, a reasonably longish rundown, and they start with the Queen issuing her first ever Easter message. So do you want to start with your Robinson's Royal Rundown, and we can actually see quite how long this list is this week?
Yeah, well, you've stolen my highlight, which is the Queen's. She gave her first ever Easter message. She recorded an audio message that played out on Saturday before Easter Sunday.
Yep, we'll hear that in full.
We'll hear that in full later. She she traditionally has her Maundy Thursday service, where she gives specially minted money to pensioners who have.
It's the Maundy money, isn't it, that she gives out? Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously that service couldn't take place this year, so she wrote a personal letter to all the recipients and sent them their money. So we can have a look at that letter. Kate and William held their first virtual royal engagement. They dropped in on a school who stayed open over the Easter holidays to help look after children of key workers. And we also heard from William. He has a new patronage of the National Emergency Trust for 2020. And he made some calls to some of the charities that are receiving help from the National Emergency Trust. Princess Anne gave quite a revealing interview to Vanity Fair.
Yes, and we'll talk about that. There's some interesting bits of that interview from the busiest working royal. But anyway, carry on.
Prince Harry dialed in from Los Angeles, where he is now living with Meghan, to support his charity Well Child that he's patron of, and he spoke to the families supported by the charity. We had a lovely new photograph of Charles and Camilla as they celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary. And final one is Prince William has just opened the NHS Nightingale Hospital in Birmingham, which will treat coronavirus patients.
I was hoping you were going to miss that one because I'd noticed that you'd left it off the list. I was going to, I've got an extra one, but you actually remembered it. Yeah, a lot to talk about. And actually, on that Harry and Meghan stuff, and we said we wouldn't necessarily cover them now, they're not royals, but nevertheless, I think this was a patronage that he had previously to his departure. So we will talk about it. But there was talking about backgrounds behind you. There's been some interesting debates on Twitter about it. Looks very much like the background that he had when he did his last message, when we all said he was in Canada. Or was he in LA at the time, or is he still in Canada now? And everyone's wondering. It's been dubbed by some people as the utility room.
Yes, that brown panel that runs down.
Kitchen so either they went to LA quite some time ago and obviously didn't tell us because they're private citizens now, so why would they? Or they're still in Canada. But anyway, who knows? Let's talk about that when we get there. Queen, first ever Easter message. So we're all used to the Queen doing a Christmas broadcast to the nation. That's sort of like just part of the Christmas furniture, if you like. An Easter message we don't really get. She does the Maundy Thursday service that you just mentioned. She goes to church on Easter Sunday, would normally go to church on Easter Sunday. And I was in the office on Saturday doing our bulletins, and actually we got this audio message from the Queen, so not in vision, but nevertheless it was quite significant, talking about a time when light overcomes darkness. And while she connected it to the Holy Week that is Easter, she was very much referring to the current situation going on around the world.
Yeah, she talks about, like you say, light overcoming darkness, and she recognizes that Easter was of course different for many of us this year, but she said that keeping apart we keep others safe. And I thought that was quite poignant for her to again reflect on this message that is sort of being drilled into us all, that we must stay at home to keep people safe. And she sort of offered we talked about her broadcast message being a message of hope, and again she says in this Easter message how that coronavirus won't overcome us.
Yes, exactly. And I thought there were some interesting parts there about as dark as death can be, she wrote or said, particularly for those suffering with grief, and we know countries like the UK, America, Italy, France, Spain, China have had very much grief. She says, light and life are greater. May the living flame of the Easter hope be a steady guide as we face the future. So I think it was another sort of poignant message from her, wasn't it? And it didn't quite get the pickup that national broadcast had the previous week, but nevertheless significant that she still wanted to remind everyone about the situation that we're all facing, and will perhaps for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think it was quite interesting to hear again how they recorded this message, obviously in terms of protecting her and keeping her safe and keeping the people involved in the recording safe. So it was once again recorded in the White Drawing Room at Windsor Castle, which is where she recorded the broadcast message, which is a very big room to means there's lots of space. And she spoke into a microphone. The sound engineer was in a room, a different room, and the microphone was all set up and cleaned in advance of the Queen coming in to record the message. So they're taking all the precautions they can to keep everybody safe.
Yeah, and actually the things that you just took for granted before, isn't it? Things that you would do, like, for example, that when we're at work, we use sort of lip microphones, the ones that go up against your lip. And, we were cleaning them. We never would before. You wouldn't even think about picking up a lip mic after someone else had been talking into it. And now we even carry around our own ones, don't we? And I just think, a Queen's broadcast, you put a microphone in front of her, it's cleaned, the sound engineer goes off into another room. Because clearly at 93, as we've said a number of times on this podcast since this outbreak started, she is very much in the high risk category.
Yeah, nearly 94 and then in the near future. So yeah, she does need protecting, but also, the people around her also need protecting, and they're obviously taking every steps that they can to look after everybody involved.
So it was a significant message. It's probably worth having listened to it. So if you subscribe to this podcast, which I'm sure you might well have done by searching Royal Rota ITV on your favourite podcast platform, or whether you're watching on YouTube, it's worth just pausing for a moment and having listened to what the Queen said in that Easter message.
Many religions have festivals which celebrate light overcoming darkness. Such occasions are often accompanied by the lighting of candles. These seem to speak to every culture and appeal to people of all faiths and of none. They are lit on birthday cakes and to mark family anniversaries, when we gather happily around a source of light. It unites us. As darkness falls on the Saturday before Easter Day, many Christians would normally light candles together. In church, one light would pass to another, spreading slowly and then more rapidly as more candles are lit. It's a way of showing how the good news of Christ's resurrection has been passed on from the first Easter by every generation until now. This year, Easter will be different for many of us. But by keeping apart, we keep others safe. But Easter isn't cancelled. Indeed, we need Easter as much as ever. The discovery of the risen Christ on the first Easter day gave his followers new hope and fresh purpose, and we can all take heart from this. We know that coronavirus will not overcome us. As dark as death can be, particularly for those suffering with grief, light and life are greater. May the living flame of the Easter hope be a steady guide as we face the future. I wish everyone of all faiths and denominations a blessed Easter.
So, Lizzie, how did you think that message landed with people that were locked in their homes, essentially, for the long Easter weekend?
Well, so after you asked me last time how I thought it landed, I did deliberately check on social media this time to see what people were responding to the post that we'd put up. And I think on the whole, it was incredibly positive. I think, every time she speaks, people do take comfort in hearing from her. I mean, she's been through so much throughout her reign and is so experienced. And I think she does offer words of hope that people do take really seriously.
Yeah. And actually, we also know that Maundy Thursday means a lot to her. In fact, the whole of the Holy Week before Easter means a lot to her. And she was probably, more than frustrated that she couldn't complete the duties that she would normally complete in that week. And therefore, she sent the Maundy money, didn't she, to the people that were due to get it from her in person.
Yeah, so she sent it to 188 recipients this year, 94 men and 94 women. And it's always sent to the number of people to match the monarch's age. So she'll be 94 this year, so it's 94 men and 94 women.
94 next week, isn't it? 94 on Tuesday. So we should talk maybe a bit later about some of the plans that the palace have or haven't got for marking that birthday. Just on Prince William, because we're talking about video messages. Interesting, we spoke on this podcast last week that I'd been to the Nightingale Hospital. That's the brand new not built but purposely converted hospital in London, where Prince Charles did the first ever royal opening. And it was well, this is a new thing. It's a royal opening. No one does these sort of things. What's happened a week or a bit later? Prince William's done another royal opening because that's all they can do at the moment. And he was speaking in Birmingham, which is the second of the UK's Nightingale hospitals. Yeah,
he spoke ahead of the opening to some of the staff that had been involved in the build of this hospital, and he said he thanked them all for the Herculean effort that it's taken to turn this site into a hospital so quickly, whether that's military staff, medical staff, logistical staff. He was really recognising the work that they'd done. And then there was the official opening where he was beamed in on a big screen and again thanked everyone involved in the NHS and in the build for all the work that they'd done to create this hospital.
I'm delighted to be with you all today, in digital spirit, that is, at least. And let me start by reiterating all that has been said so far and paying tribute to the incredible work that NHS staff across the country have been doing to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. Their selfless commitment has touched the hearts of the entire nation. The building you are standing in is yet another example of how people across the country have risen to this unprecedented challenge. The Nightingale hospitals will rightly go down as landmarks in the history of the NHS. And the NHS Nightingale Hospital Birmingham is a wonderful example of Britain pulling together. And having spoken to some of the people who helped build it, hospitals are about the people and not the bricks. NHS staff, armed forces, local governments, and the private sector have collectively stepped up to turn this exhibition centre into a hospital. You all deserve our huge thanks, and you should all be hugely proud of what you have achieved in such a short space of time. I know that the Nightingale Birmingham will provide invaluable resources for hospitals from miles and miles around. This will reassure people across the Midlands that if their local hospitals reach capacity, there will be extra beds available for their loved ones here. I find that very comforting, and I know many other people will too. I want to thank you all so much for what you are doing to ensure we give the best possible care to those affected at this most challenging of times. And finally, I'm delighted to declare the NHS Nightingale Hospital, Birmingham, officially open.
And Lizzie, I noticed from some of the pictures, just as I noticed when I went to the one in London, is how everyone was spaced out. So you had nurses, some of the military personnel who built the hospital, and actually they'd all been spaced out and they were watching Prince William on this giant screen. Actually, I thought it was slightly better than the London one because Prince Charles was outside on quite a small screen.
I thought the same because the Prince Charles one, because it was outside, the reflection on the screen made it quite hard to see him. But William, you could see really clearly.
Yeah, and actually what we haven't had, I don't know whether we will get it, is like how William has been doing all these video conference calls, because he's done what he did this one to open the hospital. He's done the school one, which we'll talk about in a sec. There were some messages last week as well, weren't there? And they've done it from the same place. You see a bit of a door, a bit of a green wall and nothing else. And you know that them and also their communications team are checking out, what can everyone see behind them. And they've done it in a very... a very bland location.
Yeah, they don't want to give too much away. But I think that's the same for lots of us. I'd set my computer up somewhere else earlier and I thought, actually, I think I'll move so you probably don't want to give people too much to look into your homes.
Yeah, no one gives a damn what's in my house, but I think they might care what's in Prince William's or Prince Harry's, as we were talking about earlier with the linen cupboard behind him. So that's obviously something that they think about very carefully at the moment. So there was that message, and I think that was quite important that he took part in that. And there are other Nightingale hospitals that are going to be opened around the UK in the coming weeks. But also they've beamed into a school as well, because as in many countries, schools are closed here. They are open to key workers, the children of NHS workers or care workers or supermarket workers. Those we still need to be going into work every day. Yeah, and even though it was the Easter holidays, they beamed in and did their thanks and did some waving.
Yeah, this school in Lancashire has stayed open as sort of a hub for lots of schools in the area, and it's helping look after children of key workers. And we got to see a little bit of the video call that they had with the children. It was really sweet. I thought it was a really nice engagement. And they came on, and the children all had their bunny ears on, and Kate said, we should have had our bunny ears on too. And they thanked, they thanked the staff, and they spoke to the children, who showed them some drawings that they'd been doing. Yeah. And I really liked one cheeky chap said to William, well, the first William was William the Conqueror. What do you want to be called? Genius. William cleverly navigated that and didn't have to answer it. But
it's probably worth having a little watch or a little listen to what they said to those children, because it was quite a sweet moment, wasn't it, when they were sort of waving into the school. And I don't know how much notice the school kids got. Not very much, I presume. But let's have a little watch or listen.
Hello guys.
Hi.
Hello. We should have had our bunny ears on.
That's a strong look.
Hello. What are your names?
My name's Harris.
Hello, Harris.
Hi, Harris.
My name's Lloyd.
Lloyd, hi.
Hi, Lloyd. Very nice to meet you. I'm Catherine, and this is William next to me. And are you holding out pictures of your mummies and daddies?
This is a picture of my mum, and she works for the NHS as an admin for the health visitors, and I'm really proud of her.
Oh.
Yeah, well done you. Can you hold it up a bit to your left so we can see it? That's it, brilliant. Look at that, that's a great picture.
Photo.
Well done.
Well done, it's brilliant. I agree, you should be very proud of her. They're doing an amazing job, all the NHS workers, so well done you. Lloyd, have you got a picture too?
This is a picture of my mum, and she works at a special school and she helps and treats children.
Fantastic. And is she still working at the moment?
This week.
She's working this week. Is that why you're having to go into school with everybody else?
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
And how do you guys feel about being at school?
I'm happy.
Happy? Good?
I feel good because it means that I can meet new people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well done you guys.
Have you met some nice new friends?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that's great.
Hello guys.
Hi. What's your names?
Darcy and Marissa.
Hello girls. Are you sisters or are you friends?
Sisters.
You're sisters. And have you been busy as well this morning?
Yes.
What have you been doing? Oh wow, look at
Yeah,
that.
look at your flowers, they're brilliant.
I love them this.
Wow, that's brilliant.
Is that a little handbag?
No,
What's
it's
that?
a Tinker bag.
Oh, it's an Easter bag, sorry. It looked like a little handbag.
Should have sent you some ears, shouldn't we?
I know.
Yeah, I know.
If we'd known, we'd have put ours on too.
Thank you so much. It's great to meet the kids. It's obviously they're having a really fun time.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an amazing experience for them. They're all very excited.
Yeah, fantastic.
No, not at all. We just want to say a huge thank you to you guys and well done in keeping it all going. And please pass on, many messages of support for all the staff and all the volunteers. They're doing a great job.
For all the parents who are key workers, to know that their children are, as you're saying, sort of the normality is there for them, and they've got the structure and they've got a safe place for them to be. So really, really well done to all of you. I know it's not easy circumstances, but it's fantastic.
Much appreciated.
Well,
Thank
have
you.
a lovely Easter
Okay.
children as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You guys too. Have a very happy Easter.
Chocolate at your house as well, probably.
There'll be a lot of chocolate being eaten here, don't worry.
Yeah,
Excellent.
You keep eating it. Thank you so much, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye everyone. Nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And it was quite light-hearted. I think it passed the day for those kids quite well, didn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was really sweet, and I thought they were both really natural with the children. And actually, somebody tweeted me afterwards saying, "Oh, why are Kate and William laughing? Why couldn't they cook them some meals or basically do something to help?" And the school actually responded to that tweet, saying that the children and staff loved having a chat, a fun chat, and it was some much needed relief in the current climate for us all. And I think that just shows the sort of, people often ask what the value in a royal visit is, and I think that response shows exactly what that virtual visit, meant to those staff and children, that it was some light relief for them in a very dark time.
And I think it's funny, isn't it? On Twitter, you get a lot of comments, positive, a lot of negative. You can do no right on Twitter sometimes. So I think, even dialing into a school, people find a reason to criticise, don't they? But William also, from this same location, from this sort of unidentifiable green wall location that they found at Amber Hall in Norfolk where they're staying, he's also spoken to the National Emergencies Trust. Being a former air ambulance pilot as he was, this is a trust that means a lot to him. He was nominated as their first ever patron. And this is an emergencies trust that's raising a lot of funds or coordinating the funds for charities around the UK so they can distribute them. And this is the first big test, if you like, of this National Emergencies Trust. It was only a year old.
Yeah, we said a couple of times, I think, on the podcast how William said, I think last year, how he hoped the day would never come where they'd need to use it, and unfortunately it has come with coronavirus. But they've raised 12.5 million on the last announcement, and another 5 million of funding has just been distributed to some of the charities they're working with. And William called 2 of those charities for a video chat. And I think the one thing that most people picked up on was when William said that he thought that Britain was at its best when faced with a crisis. We all pull together and that community spirit comes rushing back.
So he has the left-hand side of the house and I have the right-hand side of the house, so that we don't infect each other just in case.
Is this an excuse you've been looking for a while, Jackie?
Yeah, it's lovely having a double bed to myself.
And where are you, Jackie, exactly?
So Goole, which is in the East Riding of Yorkshire,
Right.
lots of small villages, lots of rural isolation as well. We've been providing Meals on Wheels service for about 12 years now. So we do a hot meal that's freshly cooked that morning, and then it's delivered in thermal boxes straight to the customers. So they actually get a nice meal, not a frozen meal or in a plastic container or anything like that.
And Jackie, how has the NET helped you? Has it given you some money, and what are you expecting from it?
Because of the panic buy-in, there was a lot of items that families in particular were really struggling with. We got the application in, got the funds straight away, so we could buy powdered milk for babies, we could buy sanitary products for women, nappies, all sorts. So those things that were vital, but were being taken off the shelves of the supermarket. So that was great that we had that really, really quickly and could have those resources there to support people. There's nothing like something like a crisis to bring you all together and, you know, to work cohesively, and that's really worked well. It's been fantastic. That's good to hear, Jackie. I agree with you. I think Britain is at its best, weirdly, when we're in a crisis. We all pull together, and that community spirit and that community feel comes rushing back quicker than anything else. Absolutely, yeah. This weekend we're sending out some bags of happiness. So we've had some of the East Riding staff making up some little bags, and they've got scented candles in. They've got some nice chocolates in. Jackie, you're doing a fantastic job. Please pass on, you know, many good wishes and big thank yous to all the volunteer team you've got up there. Could I just ask you to do a high five for all of the volunteers in East Riding? Go high fiver. Of course, I'll do a virtual high five. That's it, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. No worries at all. Lovely to speak to you, Jackie. And you. Bye. Bye-bye.
So continuing the theme of backgrounds and what's behind people and all these video calls, what was so behind Prince Harry when he did this video message for Well Child, and that's a charity that me and you have worked with before, Lizzie, isn't it? Where they helped some very seriously ill children, and their lives are much more difficult in this lockdown. He did this video call with them. Was he doing it from LA, or was he doing it from Canada, or where was he? Because it looked very similar to where he did a message before when we all thought he was in Canada, and now we know they're living in LA. So answers on a postcard.
Twitter was very, very observant last night when the video went up in the early hours, and they noticed the background was very similar. So I think they probably moved much sooner than any of us realised. Yeah,
I mean, that's what I took from it as well. Either they basically picked up the kitchen and moved it to Los Angeles, or they were already in Los Angeles when it was all happening, and that's the only thing that I can think from it. But anyway, I mean, the serious point is that he was touching base with people from Well Child who are actually having a really difficult time because they don't have the same contacts, the same carers, the same support that they would get ordinarily in this terrible pandemic.
Yeah, so Harry dialed in. The call was about 30 minutes, and they've released the whole call. Well Child released it to the media and also on their own social media channels. And he joins two parents who look after seriously unwell children, and the chief executive, Colin Dyer, and a Well Child nurse. And we know this is a cause that means a lot to Harry. He's been patron of Well Child since 2007, and he wanted to touch base and hear how the families were getting on at the moment. And they talked a lot about sort of the fears that they have, how it's a very terrifying and scary time for these families, and how they're reliant on carers, the fears they have if say their carer can't come in. Some families are finding that they want to be on vulnerable lists so that they can get help accessing support and basic supplies. So they were speaking to Harry about all these sort of challenges that they're facing at the moment.
And actually, it's the first time we've really heard from Harry. I think there's been a picture, hasn't there? But the first time we've really seen him reconnect with the patronages that he had or has kept since he left.
Yeah, and he said at the very start of the call, they asked him how he was. He said, not too bad. It's strange times. And then he did say that it was nice to see some familiar faces. And I mean, I guess it's the same for all of us to see familiar faces.
Yeah, of course.
He's a very long way away.
Yeah, he's a long way away. They've got the lockdown. They've got a baby that's taking up a lot of their time. But it's worth hearing or reminding yourselves what Harry's voice sounds like if you haven't heard it for a little while.
Hi.
Hi guys.
Hey, how are you
doing? How is everyone?
Okay. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I think it's certainly strange times. Everyone is experiencing the same thing in a very sort of unique way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But the longer this goes on for, I imagine certainly the harder it is for each and every one of you. It's very nice to see the familiar faces on here. And it's amazing because look at your faces now.
I know.
Everything you're dealing with, you deal with it with such grace, right? And I think it's really important for people to remember that just because you as a parent or as anybody can sit there now smiling, being like, this is fine, like, but what's actually going on in your mind and the experiences that you've had over the last few weeks, and in some cases maybe years, the resilience and the strength that you guys have is absolutely incredible. And you must never, ever, ever, ever forget that. And of course, there's going to be hard days. I can't even begin to imagine how hard it is for you guys. You're having one kid at 11 months old. So to see what you guys are going through on a day-to-day basis, honestly, so much respect to every single one of you. And to Rachel, to you, as you quite rightly say, there's a hell of a lot of positives that are happening at the same time, and being able to have family time, so much family time that you almost think, oh, do I feel guilty for having so much family time? It's well, you've got to celebrate those moments where you just are on the floor rolling around in hysterics because of something that's happened, and then there's inevitably half an hour later, maybe a day later, there's going to be something that you have to deal with, and there's no way that you can run away from it. You can't even distract yourself in a different room. But as long as you guys are looking after yourselves and looking after each other, that is the best that you can do.
So Harry and Meghan have been out of the game for a while now. I thought it was quite interesting that Princess Anne popped up in Vanity Fair, an interview that she did, during the whole sort of time that the Sussexes were leaving. She didn't talk about them, nor did she talk about the divorce of her son and daughter-in-law, Peter Phillips and Autumn Phillips, even though I think if you read the copy, the announcement of the divorce of Peter Phillips was made on the morning they did the interview, wasn't it? So I just, it was quite unusual to hear so much from Princess Anne, wasn't it? Someone who, the Queen's only daughter, second child, but someone we don't really hear very much about despite her heavy, heavy workload. Yeah, she's known for being one of the, or if not the hardest working royal. I think she undertook 500 engagements last year.
Yeah.
She was eclipsed last year by her brother, by Prince Charles, but
15 engagements or something, I think.
Normally she is the busiest of them all. But I just thought, her words of wisdom. I mean, there's a lot of talk about, what horses mean to her and all the rest of it. She was the sports personality of the year. She competed in the Olympics in 1976. But she was kind of handing down some words of wisdom to the younger royals, wasn't she?
Yeah, she's talking about how she said nowadays they're much more looking for, let's try and do it a new way, and that she's already at the stage of, in her words, please do not reinvent that particular wheel.
Yeah, we've already done it.
Done that. Some of these things don't work. You may need to go back to basics.
Yeah, go back to basics. Now, we have absolutely no idea if she was referring to Harry and Meghan there, and the fact that they wanted to kind of reinvent the wheel, found out that royal life didn't work for them in the UK and moved to Canada, then America. But you kind of can, I don't know, you can kind of match her words to the situation that we've all just experienced earlier on in the year with Harry and Meghan's departure.
Yeah, and before she made that point about reinventing the wheel, she's talking about service and how it's not about just getting a tick in the box, and that it's about serving, and that she gets that sense of wanting to serve from both her parents and what they saw their role being. So again, she at no point does she talk about any other members of the family or say that they did this or they didn't do this, but she does talk about service and what that means, and kind of using her parents as role models.
And there was one similarity, actually, major similarity with her older brother, Prince Charles, which is their love of recycling outfits and clothing. And she has some outfits that she has worn in the 1980s and she still wears now. Her brother does much the same thing, doesn't he?
Yeah. She's well known for recycling, and she talks about that. Says maybe it's just because she's tight, but also, she does see the benefits and enjoys being able to recycle.
Yeah, and she also refers to herself as a dinosaur when she was talking about, I don't know why young people need to go on screens when there's so much to see outside.
Yeah, I like how she said that she described herself as the boring fuddy-duddy at the back saying, don't forget the basics, and that was all part of that section where she was
boring
talking
fuddy-duddy at the back.
Yeah.
But it's, again, in terms of being outside and also re-wearing your clothes, puts her in a very similar camp to her brother. They were clearly taught that at an early age. And there was a very sweet picture, wasn't there, of Prince Charles and the Duchess of Cornwall with her dogs, Beth and Bluebell, am I right?
Beth and Bluebell, yeah,
Beth
the Duchess's rescue dogs. It was a really lovely. They've been reunited, obviously, after they've both been in self-isolation. Him after testing positive for coronavirus and to self-isolate as a result of that. So they've been reunited, and they had this lovely picture taken by a member of staff at Burke Hall for their 15th wedding anniversary with the dogs in very sort of I guess casual wear for a royal, and it was a really sweet picture, I thought.
Yeah, it was quite homely in a way, wasn't it? And I suppose that's how everything is at the moment, quite homely. So listen, we managed to get through another half hour, 40 minutes of this, despite nothing going on. So well done, royals. Well done, Lizzie. Thank you for joining me virtually, as seems to be the way of everything at the moment. And we will pick up again next week. We know actually of some stuff that's happening in the next day or two, so we can talk about that next week. Can't talk about it at the moment. So we'll be back. You know, as I said many times on this blog, look after yourselves, keep safe, keep well, stay indoors, and hopefully we'll see some light at the end of the tunnel soon. But in the meantime, bye.